Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a somewhat retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich.
It felt natural. It felt
good.
It felt the right thing to
Felt
do.
right.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
Anybody that listened to the last podcast knows that.
Anybody that didn't.
yeah. What's going on? So we are in the heights of what I would say is summer season. It's been really, really warm in the UK for months now, pretty much, which is very rare. And I think what wind up, I'm going to be on holiday in a couple of weeks' time. So there's nothing better than playing a blockbuster in the middle of summer, playing something like what I would consider as a blockbuster franchise, but I don't really have that much of a history with, if I'm going to be honest. Which is ironic because mine's a historical game within that franchise. But we are going to be discussing Far Cry this evening, but not the main thrust of Far Cry, which is a bit weird, really, because then it's almost like, well, people would question. So I've played Far Cry Primal, for example, for the podcast this week, and I've never really completed that much of a Far Cry previous to that. I'd played a little bit of 4 and a little bit of 3, but I'd never actually finished them off. And yourself, sir, how much Far Cry have you played?
So I dabbled with Far Cry 1, finished Far Cry 2.
Oh, good.
Dabbled with 3, dabbled with 4, have dabbled with 5.
Dabbler.
And played fucking Blood Dragon. Yeah, boy.
So that's a spin-off from the 3rd game?
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, cool. So, of all those, quickly, without going to Blood Dragon, obviously, of all those that you've played so far, which felt most like your Far Cry game of choice?
It would probably be 2 or 3. I think 2 is the one that I've got the fondest memories of playing originally, because it was just the sheer ridiculousness of that, like I have with Battlefield and all that kind of stuff, that kind of emergent, like, oh, I wasn't expecting that to happen while I was playing it kind of stuff. With like weapon jamming and fire and all that kind of stuff. I think 3 did really, really well for bringing in kind of more customization options, but also making it feel like you had more options to tackle any given situation. The one that I'm kind of not disappointed. What's the word I want? Like, I'm not disappointed or angry about it, but like,
not mad.
The one that I would really, really like to play more of is Far Cry 5. But it's not for the setting or the story or anything like that. It's because I think that one is likely to have a multiplayer component. That scratches an itch for actually just going in and causing absolute havoc.
You quite like your non-traditional multiplayer havoc-causing games.
Like give me a sandbox and a set of tools and another person to wade in with, then
rain it down on them. I guess that reason I sort of said about Far Cry feeling quite blockbustery, and certainly in the title of the game, is like it is that faraway island or place, or that Hollywood sort of setting where. I mean, shit always goes wrong in Far Cry games, pretty much. I don't think it's a spoiler necessarily, but it is an immersive experience that takes you away from the real world, and that's something that you think, a lot of experiences when it comes to video games. It feels like Far Cry is Ubisoft's sort of Assassin's Creed, but batshit crazy, almost in a way. So thank you for that. I guess then. We've gone for a couple of what you describe as spin-offs. Mine's less of a spin-off and almost a bit like a mainline game, but it uses some of the previous game, which was Far Cry 4. It uses some of its assets. So let's go with the pure spin-off, I think, first, which is Blood Dragon. I believe is that there's a Trials of the Blood Dragon, which isn't this. I know that, but that's like a Trials game, like a racing game. And then I think New Dawn has some RPG stuff as well. So there's, I guess, a history of them doing spin-offs. You can pick your poison a little bit. So I'm interested to hear about this one, because I do own this, and I was going to play it at some point myself, but I think I'll just listen to you talk about it.
It's definitely its own beast. Like, why they put Far Cry 3 on the label, I'm not entirely sure. It just seemed to come out at a similar sort of time, and I think as best I can tell, the only reason that they didn't just give it like a name like Primal and like not have a number on it is because it is quite short. Like if you are burning through the story missions, you will be done in like 4 hours, something like that.
I'm interested now, even more so.
I mean, for my money's worth, that is perfect.
Yeah.
Like it is absolutely perfect. There's only about 6 main story missions in it. They're all pretty substantial, but they don't outstay their welcome.
Yeah.
And the dialogue can get a bit repetitive. Like when you're out in the open world and is like one-line quips, they can get a bit repetitive. So just as it starts to outstay its welcome a little bit, you're basically done and you're dusted and you're out. Perfect.
Just asking about that Far Cry 3 thing then, and I know you're going to this probably anyway, but it's almost like, is there a long, well, there won't be a long lead in with 4 hours, but is there a tutorial in this? Like, it's almost like you play it separately, that you're not expected to know what the mechanics of Far Cry are.
No, like you're tutorialized from the start, and it is set up as a joke.
All right.
Like the whole thing's got a really good tongue-in-cheek humor. It is a proper send-up of like 80s, maybe early 90s blockbuster action films. It hits so many references and so many tropes, even just in that opening tutorial sequence. Like it is ridiculous. Like the weapons are references to stuff, lines of dialogue are references to stuff, the music playing in the friggin' helicopter is references to stuff. Like there are just so many. The voice actors are references to stuff. Like it through and through. Like this is possibly one of, if not the greatest video gaming parody I have ever come across.
Great.
Like it's incredible. And I think I take it as I think it should take it as a compliment that like I have owned this game on I do not know how many systems. Like PS3, I've got it on for Xbox, Steam. Like I've started it so many times, played that first mission, and then barely ever gone back to it.
Yeah.
Like, and I realized going back through this time, oh, actually, the furthest through I got before was actually halfway through the story, and I didn't even notice. So like, yeah, it's got like the cutscenes and stuff like that have really fun pixel art, really good dialogue, some incredible lines in it. When you, like I say, when you're out and about, they can get a little bit repetitive, but the action carries a lot of it through because that is proper Far Cry 3 action. The combat and the moves and the abilities you have, that's the word I was after, aren't necessarily ones you can pick from like a tree or anything like that. So you will level up and you just get the next ability, the next health bar increase, whatever, which feels nice and streamlined. I quite like that because you feel like you're developing as a character, you feel like you're growing, you feel like you're getting stronger, but you don't actually have to worry about it too much. There's a nice little gameplay loop where you will go and liberate an outpost that kind of unlocks a fast travel point, also unlocks local kind of side quests that you can do for extra attachments for your guns. And that is how you can develop your weapons. You can spend money to get ammo, consumables for your health and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, like it feeds into this nice loop. The titular blood dragons show up pretty early. You can lure them around with cyber hearts ripped out of your enemies and stuff like that. You can bring the shields down on these outposts and a blood dragon will just rampage in and do a load of your dirty work for you. You can just pick people off around that. You can go in all stealthy like, you could go in guns blazing, you have enough options for it to feel substantial without it ever being overwhelming. There are enough icons on the map to feel like you've got lots of stuff to do without it ever being overwhelming. For me, this is Ubisoft's sweet spot. This is perfect for me. Like 4 or 5 hour campaign. There's plenty of extra stuff to do if I want to do it, but yeah, not having to worry about it too much. It's bang on.
It sounds like what I want. You know, everyone keeps on banging about or going, oh, well, let's get an original Metal Gear, like, you know, Metal Gear 1 and 2, like 1987 style. Like, I imagine that I want it to be this. Maybe you'd have less blood dragons, but almost like this is what I want my Snake to be. Like,
like, no, I could kind of see that.
Not like first person, like Metal Gear Solid 5 engine.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but
Metal Gear Solid 5 mechanics, but this kind of size and scope. I can see that.
And maybe even this sort of like style as well, like as in, you know, like maybe not that on the nose with the parodies and the prestige, but it's almost like, it's like at the same time maybe also like it's a bit, because Metal Gear Solid's a bit like that anyway. So I feel like sorry, I feel like I'm in Zanzibar right now.
But it does a really good job of making you feel like a cyber commando. So like some of the that's a ridiculous sentence. Some of the
I nodded.
You did. But some of the abilities that you would get later in Far Cry 3, you get straight off the bat here.
Yeah.
And so some of the more powerful ones, like chaining takedowns and stuff like that, you can do just straight off the bat in the tutorial. And things like that make you feel like a badass.
Yeah.
So they've clearly gone through the existing skill tree from Far Cry 3 and gone, oh yeah, that'll work. We'll give them those to start with, and see how they get on.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's I think really well pitched for always making you feel like a badass, even though you're outnumbered and outgunned, and giving you plenty of stuff to do, but not taking the piss in terms of, you have to do it to progress. You have to do this, that, the other. You're going to have to grind it out. It would be very easy for the joke to wear thin.
Yeah.
But it's not around long enough to do that. And to be honest with you, if it does start to wear thin, that's probably because you finished the story and you're doing all the side quest stuff and you're 100%ing it, in which case that's on you. So yeah, like I think in terms of like pacing and scope of what you can and can't do and all that kind of stuff, I think it's really, really good. It's not perfect.
No.
So it is very striking looking. There's a lot of bright neon that pops, but for it to pop, that means that by extension there needs to be a lot of drab stuff. So like there's a lot of just vast swathes of like red, brown, grey, kind of nothingness to let the neon do its thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that when you're traversing the open world, it can get a little bit one note and samey. You do have some vehicles in it, and a couple of options for getting around, but there's not loads of them or anything like that. So yeah, it can feel like when you're in the open world, visually it's a little dull, and then you get to a story mission where the bells and whistles come out, and they're, you can tell that someone's gone through and made it look a certain way, and it pops again, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm back. But it's that sort of point A to point B kind of stuff where it kind of drops a little bit. You have a lot of enemies that throw a lot of fire around because Far Cry. And it's got the same healing mechanisms from 3. So like if you are on fire, you hold down triangle to put the fire out. But you also hold down triangle to use one of your health stims. So it's quite easy to like accidentally burn through those when you've got basically full health and you're just trying to pat a fire out on your arm. And it's just because you're in the middle of doing a different action at the same time, and the game's got a little bit confused. You're disconnected from it, trying to work out the timings on things like that. And yeah, like it's apart from that, like maybe there could be a little bit more weapon variety, but you unlock a couple of extra ones as you go. But even then, for the most part, they're ones that you will be absolutely fine using. I think there's a lot to like here as a little sort of bite-sized, just wall-to-wall insanity. There's a great little throwaway line near the end about going back to the Stone Age, which definitely feels, in hindsight, with Far Cry Primal, like a bit of a nudge and a wink. But there's also a setup for a sequel that never came. But my God, could you imagine a Blood Dragon 2, like with the advances we've got in how things can look, and like how cyberpunk could look sometimes by comparison. Like if they took some of those bits and added in a couple of extra weapons and polished up some of those visuals, like I think you could trot that out sharpish, and for like one of us at least would be very happy about that. So yeah, like it's good fun, doesn't outstay its welcome. I would love for them to bring it back. I really would.
So I mean, well, I guess I'll make this point now then, and then you said about, and then you can finish off with your score and things. You said about this being the sweet spot, and I think that this probably was really, and I'm saying that I've played quite a lot of Ubisoft games this year, that or even recently, but certainly like Child of Light, Valiant Hearts, Far Cry Primal, Assassin's Creed 2, and not one of them from that era kind of truly has disappointed me yet. whereas you look at, so it's a real shame, I think, with the state that Ubisoft's in, because Assassin's Creed Shadows and Star Wars Outlaws have kind of crushed them, I think, in terms of cost and them not being successful. And I was looking, we'd love to have Blood Dragon 2 by the sound of things, but they laid off 1,200 people last year. They lost $1.3 billion in the last year. So you just think that you can't see it ever happening, which is sad, really, because like you said, it sounds great.
That's the thing. Like for my part, it does so much right, but like I can imagine that the powers that be would probably look at a bottom line and go, you know what, we've re-released it however many times. You can play it if you like. We don't need to do another one.
Yeah.
However, I might have to look up some mods for the PC version, because I bet the modding community is probably well on it with visuals and stuff like that.
I'm sure, right?
Yeah. But like it's that kind of thing where I really, really do like this game. I think it genuinely, without a hint of irony, is probably my favourite Far Cry game.
I was about to ask
like
that, yeah.
It's just so much fun. So much of the dialogue had me chuckling away, and so many of the daft little send-ups and tropes. The finale arguably simultaneously is an absolute riot and falls a little bit flat depending on how you put things. However, in the context of an 80s action movie send-up, I think is basically note perfect.
Yeah.
Like, because they were never perfect.
No, exactly. To perfect that as a parody is great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they've they got a lot right with this.
So I know you don't give a shit before I start saying asking this question, but if you were somebody that's played the entirety of the Far Cry series, every single game, do you think it would be palatable to them for you to say that this is the best maybe potentially the best Far Cry, because it's such a different beast from the rest of it?
I think it depends on what era of Far Cry is your favourite. I think if it's some of the later, like bigger, more expansive ones, both in terms of geography and character options and weapon options, then I could see that you'd be scoffing at that statement. I think if you go back to the earlier ones and you're like, oh yeah, like you can kind of see that it's a similar sort of, or it feels to me like a similar sort of scale to something like a Far Cry 2. I think you'd probably be okay with me saying this. But for my part, like I don't have the time or really the inclination to invest dozens and dozens and dozens of hours into basically anything nowadays. So yeah, like knowing that I could sit there and well, I mean, I played this over the course of a month, but theoretically a couple of evenings for your 4 or 5 hours, then I think it's basically bang on.
Yeah. Score? Did you get score?
I was going to give it an 8. The more I've talked, I'm kind of tempted to bump that up to a 9, but I still think that's possibly too much.
Yeah.
Just because of how empty and drab the open world can occasionally feel. Like, stuff happens, stuff is going on, random shootouts will be starting, you will be attacked by random animals like cyber sharks, like all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, exactly.
Get that ship to a 9 right now. Cyber sharks.
This is the thing. Like, there's so many fun little bits and bobs in it. If anything, I want more.
Yeah.
Like, you could really push this if you wanted to. But like, at the same time, would I trust Ubisoft to not push it too far? I don't think I would. But
there's probably another version of this game that's 8 hours long and actually still doesn't outstay its welcome, and you're like, oh, I've got a little bit more to it, and
or like, in fact, as I'm talking now, it kind of reminds me of like, if you've got like a really rich meal on the go, and you're like, oh, this is great, I could have loads of this. Then you kind of get towards the end, you start to slow down a little bit, and you're like, no, actually, maybe the portion I've been given has been thought about, and someone's made the right decision for my own good.
Lasagna is I'm like, I start lasagna like a train, and then I'm like, by the end of a normal size lasagna, I'm like,
and I think someone, I know we always sit here and say about like editing it down to make it tighter and being okay taking things out to make it better, and I think actually, this is possibly a good example where someone actually did that. So I'm kind of reluctant to sit here and go like, yeah, more. I want more. I want more. Actually, I think they've really thought about it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick to my guns and say 8.
Yeah.
Because if I say 9, I'm getting greedy.
No, I mean, it could be a world where they've maximised their potential with this particular game, and that be, you know, a high 8. That isn't, yeah, that's really cool. I definitely will play that at some point because it won't take that much time, I guess, really.
Even if you only play the opening hour or so, just to get a sense of what's going on, I think you'll get a really good picture by the end of that tutorial when it lets you actually save it and you've liberated your first outpost.
Yeah.
And if you've fallen in love with it by then, buckle up. If you haven't, I think you're all right.
Yeah.
And you'll know what its deal is.
I think I probably will. Would feel the same way as yourself about it. I think the reason that I didn't play it is because I was almost a little bit more intrigued, and I have been always a little bit more intrigued by the concept of Far Cry Primal. Because, like I said, I've dabbled with 3 and dabbled with 4, and when I say dabbled, it'll be less of a dabble than yourself. Like, I'm talking like maybe 3 or 4 hours in each, really. And then I've watched people play 4, for example. But I don't know what it was or is about Far Cry Primal. Even reading when I've read rankings of Far Cry games before, this never really ranks up there as like, you know, the one that people love. But I think it's just really audacious to go back and say you are a caveman in a video game, and, you know, in an open world, knowing how well that in this time period, how well Ubisoft did open world, really, like, you know, give or take a few thousand icons on a map. So yeah, I was like, right, okay, no, I'm going to go back and do it and just see what it's like. You know, it uses the same map as Far Cry 4, but it kind of reskins it as prehistoric Carpathian mountains. So, you know, Eastern Europe. It's 10,000 BC. You play as Takar, who is a Wenya tribe member who must rise through the ranks to, you know, to basically lead his tribe to regional dominance. That is, I guess, as deep as the story gets, almost, in a way, which I appreciate. That isn't. It's just, you know, there doesn't need to be lots of. There is a bit like, it almost splits the story into 2. There's like 2 tribes that you kind of war against, and there is like some hamming it up, and these, you know, as there always is in Far Cry, like these enemies, that the villains, that the masters of, you know, villainy, who are the most evil, most powerful people to beat in the region. You know, that does happen, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily go into it lots and lots of times. You end up with almost like I want to call it a team, really. You always play as Takar, but you end up with finding 3 or 4 other people who then have special abilities that effectively become your skill tree. It's a bit of a weird one, really. So it's almost like they I'm trying to think, for example, like you'll end up with a warrior, and then they kind of like are the people that then help craft your weapons, and you can visit them within your village where you do resource management, and it's really funny because it's a crafting and survival game, as you would expect in 10,000 BC, and there's a lot of that management. But I think in 2026 there would be so much energy and piled into that, and resource management would, you know, loads of skill points here and there and stuff, and that is there, but it's almost like a light version of that. And I think it was before it was truly realized that people that, you know, that enjoy doing that as much, and it still stays on the right side of Far Cry, if you will. So even though that a significant amount of the game is lent to that, it keeps it very much like press this button to optimize, and it's almost like, oh, pick, you know, you've got an extra skill point from doing this mission, but it's not like, oh, here's 1,000 skill points and 1/10 of each have to be, you know, diversified into all these different things. So I again, for my stupid, you know, brain, I was like, brilliant. I can just kind of like pick and choose the few things that I want that will probably even just progress the story, really. Like there's a grappling hook, for example, that, you know, okay, they probably didn't have grappling hooks back in 10,000 BC, but it takes that artistic license to think that you kind of go, but they could have, and it looks, you know, the way they've drawn it on the screen, it looks like something that you might, you know, people will have climbed up cliffs in 10,000 BC using something. That is, so yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, you also have this very special gift you can tame wild animals, and that's kind of like the kicker of where the fantastical part comes into it. Again, based in truth, probably, because, for example, domesticated dogs used to be wolves before we domesticated them in Stone Age times, basically.
Someone went and talked nice to them.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and I mean, I'm not so sure about a mountain lion or a or a honey badger that you seem to be sort of, you know, you seem to coax to be your animal that sits at your side. It's quite fun sending your mountain lion out to maul like local tribesmen. Like, it's ridiculous. That isn't, obviously, but at the same time, you know, if you stick to a wolf, for example, you could do that if you choose to, then you could say in your head, you can twist it and go, that's quite realistic, almost, in a way, maybe, that people would have that going on. I think one thing that this probably, and this is maybe where I think the ranking comes into it with people in general with Far Cry Primal. There's no modern firearms, as you would expect, you know, being you know, from such an old time. You craft clubs, spears, bows and arrows, you know, and then you can use the abilities of your friendly wild companions to attack people, which is almost like a long range sort of like attack. And I think they do a good job of mixing that in, because you get your bow and arrow, which is your long range weapons, if you will. You get, you know, your melee weapons, so therefore your clubs and things. And you can throw darts, for example, and I think, I can't remember what they are, like throwing knives. There's lots of fire at Far Cry. You know, there's lots of fire. You know, I thought they really did a great job of navigating round what most of the Far Cry games are, that they have this modern weaponry, and you almost build up, as you said previously, where you kind of get to the point where you end up with these abilities. And actually, I think they do a really good job of finding these, I guess, quasi abilities that you would think that would really advance the way that you operate in 10,000 BC and keep it in the Far Cry engine. I thought it was genius, and I get that there is probably some people out there say, well, you don't get enough of them, and it's all kind of, you know, if you want to shoot from afar, there's a lot of bow and arrow, for example. But I didn't find it repetitive, really, necessarily too much. Like, and the reason I'm probably saying this is there is a choice at the start of the game of a normal mode and a survival mode.
Right.
I went with the normal mode. I think next time, or when I say next time, or maybe even, like, you know, I think there probably will be next time, I will go back for survival mode, because that is purely like all the comforts are turned off.
Right.
You basically have no map. Permadeath is firmly switched on. You know, it's a sim-like experience.
Right.
And I kind of read up about
cool.
I read up about it, and people were like, those in the know, you know, in the deepest, darkest parts of the internet and stuff, were like, Far Cry Primal survival mode is one of the best video games that you can play. Like, as a sim-like experience. If you want to be a caveman, play Far Cry Primal. And I can just see a world now where that is on the MetaQuest, for example. And I was like, and the bits where it's like, I can just imagine the freedom of all the, you know, like actually living and breathing like, you know, a caveman, and how quickly I would be dead. Like, I'd be starting the game again, but I'd be like, well, that was very realistic, wasn't it? Like,
tragically, I immediately went to the 90s style advertising campaign for a hypothetical VR version of this game where you've got like a caveman sat in your kitchen or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Far Cry Primal out now. So I thought it was, you know, pretty original. I think that the parts that feel a bit unoriginal is almost the bits that feel most like Far Cry. That is, in, you know, that you have all the icons on the map, and you're navigating this world to go, and it's almost like the next quest to go here, next quest to go here, next quest to go here. There is very much like the spirit walks that you kind of get in different things with Far Cry, where you eat the wrong drugs or whatever and stuff like that. That here, like, it keeps on the right side of and this is why I'm kind of speaking out of two sides of my mouth, really, because I would really enjoy that pure caveman sim experience, and I do want to try that out. But I also enjoy the normal mode where you kind of like get that. You go on these spirit walks, for example, and you drink some rat blood and, like, you know, some human eyeballs, for example, and stuff, and it kind of just keeps that sort of like, you know, silly Far Cry thing about it. That's still there. So, I think that it's got a really strong opening as well. Like, you kind of enter into this cave painting sequence, for example, telling how your tribe and Takars come to be, the Wenya tribe, and what stands against them. And then you're on a woolly mammoth hunting mission, which is like effectively the start of the tutorial. That and you're meant to just kind of wrangle this little woolly mammoth basically. That little woolly mammoth fucked me up. Like, I was dead in a second, and I was just like, "This is definitely how I would be in 10,000 BC. I'd be dead." Like, like my lineage would not have made it this far. Like, and you get into and then you get into a fight with a saber-toothed tiger, for example, and then your first forage. That the name of the mission is just like go get some green leaves on your own, and then you just kind of left to just wander into the world. I mean, you can kind of go as far as you want, really. What you should do is just go down to the local river and pick up some green leaves. If you're me, you're immediately mauled by a hog. I got bum rushed by a flesh-eating rival gang, the tribe. It just, it very much grabbed your attention early. So that was really, really good. The map, because you kind of get all the icons as you normally do with an Ubisoft game, but this is really cool because there's lots of animals on there, which I know that kind of is on Far Cry sort of previously and things, but this is because this is all about interacting with your rival tribes or enemy tribes even, and then also what are enemy animals until you can tame some of them, and some of them you can't tame. Like, it looks like a safari park orientation on this map. It's wonderful. And then all of a sudden, you're just pottering about, like slaying half of the animal kingdom. That is almost half the time. And for something that seems to be has a very green message as a game, if I'm going to be honest, like that felt a bit weird. That I'm just killing everything and farming all the skins and stuff. At one point, like an eagle just picked up a goat and flew off. I was like, that is the best. That's just the best. I was like, it's really, really fun. And then it was kind of like, you could see that the game engine was thinking, is this the right idea? Like, I don't really know. It was kind of stuttering in the sky a little bit. And I was like, I don't know if that was meant to happen. I mean, obviously it was, but it was like, someone's put that in the back end of, development and be like, that'll be hilarious. Oh, wait, no, it's not working. I think there was, funnily enough, which I don't know how to sort of describe this really, I think there's probably just too many resources. There's too many animals. You bump into too many enemies too often. You get too many animal skins. You get too many plants.
The Ubisoft problem.
Yeah, you're just shoving things in this little burl up sack that you've got. And I'm like, how can this caveman be carrying 3,000 of this? And then you can also manage those resources back at your home village, and you kind of end up like, oh, you've got like 3,000 pieces of wood, and I'm like, I probably only need 10. I didn't need that, that's where I think I'd like the survival mode over the normal, because I was a bit like, well, it just takes out the immersion a little bit when you can kind of just do whatever you want. You can walk around wherever you want, kill as many animals as you like, pretty much. That is, and obviously there's a challenge to that in some of them, but and you can fight any tribesman, and it almost just felt like it was giving you a bit too much. And I feel like, I mean, this game's 15 hours long. I wouldn't say it feels overbearing in how much you have to do, but every 1 minute you were bumping into something else where you're like, and I was a bit like, I probably should collect that, because I don't know if I do need it or not need it. And about halfway through the game I was like, I don't need to collect anything anymore. Like, it becomes into a sort of there's a resource farm kind of going back into your village and stuff. Like, every so often you might run out of wood for spears or for bows and arrow, but it's very rare. Like, isn't it? I seem to be finding it very easy to progress through the game, and not have to pick up many more resources, really. Which, for something that I would think the main focus should be crafting, hunting, gathering, like it felt like they could have just honed that in and made it a bit more about that.
It was one of those things that, now you mention it, like, I really didn't miss in Blood Dragon. Like, there was none of that really. Yeah. And if I remember rightly, even Far Cry 3, you were having to like murder however many whatevers to make a new holster for an extra gun and all that kind of stuff. There was none of that in Blood Dragon, and I think that was partly why I found it so refreshing.
Yeah,
it was just like, go save this scientist. Great, now you can put a suppressor on your pistol, which is from RoboCop. It's that sort of thing. So no, it's interesting they put that much of it in. Yeah. But it makes sense. If you're meant to be a hunter-gatherer, then it stands to reason you'd be gathering. Yes. But there's gathering, and then there's picking up like basically an entire IKEA's worth of wood.
Well, that is exactly how it felt like. It's almost like very much like Pokemon. Like a wild cat appeared. Like, and I
have to.
Yeah, I wanted to be the hunter-gatherer, but I was like, but I'm not really. I'm not
It's hoarding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just
Hunter hoarder.
just picking everything up. Like, it could have been a bit of challenge to that. Like, go and find this rare plant. And every so often, some of the missions would be like, even quite far into the game, go and hunt this rare animal and stuff like that. And I'd be like, I killed the non-rare variant of that a while ago. I've got it. Do you know what I mean? I don't need that. It just felt like a bit of a mismatch in terms of the pacing of the game sometimes. But it was almost like, trying to go back to that first point of you were in this open world and you just kind of go, you can go as far as you like, go and do what you want. And it was almost like it probably needed to have a bit more of a, going back to the Assassin's Creed podcast, where it's like, you can't go off this area yet because, I don't think they could think of well, they did have a mechanic for that, actually. You'd have to be able to get the grappling hook, for example, and stuff like that. And so they did have a way of doing that. But a lot of the area was quite open immediately.
Yeah.
They do kind of try and bring a bit of climate into it as well. So it's almost like if you go into the snowy mountains, for example, and it's like you shouldn't be here. Like you're just wearing your bare skin. Like, but I could just kind of traverse around as much as I like. If you went at a certain speed, for example, I expected it to have kind of blocked that part of the game off to say you need to create this clothing first, or you need to have this type of medicine first, or something. And that just wasn't the case. And I was
interesting.
So I was like, oh, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And it just didn't feel like they'd kind of worked it out enough in terms of how they should manage the pacing of the game and the map.
Because that's the kind of thing that they managed to nail in like Breath of the Wild and stuff like that, isn't it? It's like, you've got to invent the right kind of jerkin to be able to survive here long enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just think that it was known goal, because it would have been, they've done it before, they know how to do it, and they just didn't do it. And I was like, oh right, okay, that's very strange. The artistic license in terms of the beast taming sort of thing as well, like you end up with an owl just like you would do like an eagle for Assassin's Creed, that can just basically, you can send it out to look over camps that you're about to attack, or there's like campfires and different sort of forts that you can take over, and they become sort of quick travel points, for example. And like I say, you've got this owl. It gets a bit much with that sort of that beast taming experience sort of thing as well, where you just, again, that feels like a bit OP after a little while.
Bit Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah. You just like, you feel like you could just kind of collect any animal and send any animal out. That is, and just sort of, like you send out your, I don't know, possum to go and like take out some snakes or something, and be like, it just. And there's points where you can ride on woolly mammoths, for example, and stuff. And yeah, again, you can stretch your mind to think that possibly could have happened, that is in some point in the past and stuff, but it just felt a bit superfluous. Like it didn't, it was almost like it didn't. There's a fun mechanism where you ride on a mammoth and you can like smash through loads of stuff, like and then use it again as a weapon. And it was almost like their way they were kind of like trying to stretch to, we don't have modern weapons, so have as many different types of things that you could use in the area, which are all animals.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I think it kind of goes back to something you said about the kind of traditional Far Cry like ridiculousness thing, which I don't think they did it as much in like 1 and 2. At least I don't remember it as much. But like the kind of getting high and the psychedelic stuff, like definitely like Far Cry 3 onwards, but they sort of seem to struggle to tread a fine line between being realistic and plausible and being insane. Whereas again, Blood Dragon at least lent into the insanity, just and I think is better for it. Whereas from what you're saying here, having a simulation mode, but then also letting you ride a woolly mammoth feels like a bit of an odd juxtaposition.
Yeah, and I think that it sounds like I've kind of ended on a bit of a bum note, and I'm not trying to. It was almost just thinking about why. I keep on going back to, I wonder why people didn't necessarily give this its dues, because actually I think it's worth its dues. I think that this is a really very good game, to be honest. Overall, like it's inventive with those things, and like I said it before, I feel like I'm speaking out two sides of my mouth, because I'm almost like, well, this is dumb, and and I can see why that would kind of annoy me. And then I go the next minute, I'm like, oh, actually, it's quite fun. Really inconsistent, like is not necessarily negatively either. Just sort of almost like I feel like I'm flitting between two different modes of what I should be doing, and it never really coalesced into that one main sort of through thread. I was like, oh, this is what I feel really confident about. Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if they would have done better with it if they hadn't reused the map and they hadn't had Far Cry on the box.
Yeah.
Like if they'd given it a different name and, given it a different map.
Yeah.
Kind of made it more its own thing,
I think that people were like at the time were saying, "Oh, well, why am I paying for the Far Cry 4 map again?" And also, and there's no weapons kind of thing, and I think that is it's easy now for me to play it today. I've forgotten what the Far Cry 4 map looks like and go, well, this is a great map, you know what I mean? And it looks, for a game that now is 10 years old, it looks really good. That is in it, I played it on my PS Portal, and one of the really nice things about the PS Portal was normally it glows different colours, but like I've never really seen it like specifically pretty much like orange, white, pink. Those three, this glowed green when I played Far Cry Primal, and I was like, that's great, that's so cool. I was like, okay, I've not seen any other games that do that, and I was like, that is really interesting. That is in the kind of, because we'll have to have retrospectively thought about that, and is that the green message coming through, or was I was just like, oh, this is really cool. So yeah, I think that just if you take out the idea that there was a bit too much of the resources and collectathon management stuff or anything that would make it a truly great or groundbreaking game, I thought it was just fun. Do you know what I mean? That is when you come back, we always come back to that sort of like, did I enjoy it? Yeah, I really enjoyed my time with it. And was it fun? Yeah, I did. Yeah. It just a bit lumpy sometimes in what it wants to be. Yeah. So I think I was kind of 7 or an 8. I'll probably go for a 7. I think that is in where it is, but it's a really good 7, nearly an 8, I think. And yeah, I do not regret my choice of playing this, because I feel like I probably gelled with it as well as anybody would gel with it, I think. So I'll be interested to hear if anybody has played lots of Far Cry and would now consider going back to this to try it out, especially today when it still operates really, really well.
I'm definitely more intrigued by it than I was, but I'm intrigued by it. Yes. Not necessarily like I'm going to go buy it tonight.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no. Part of the reason I like Blood Dragon as much as I do is that utter balls out insanity. Yeah, like it knows exactly what it's doing and what lane it's in, and it's going to stick to it. Yes, hell or high water, and I gotta give it respect for that. Whereas Primal sounds a little bit more like it's got maybe not like an identity crisis, but like it's less assured.
Well, I can certainly see, having played the main game and not played the survival mode yet, but I can definitely see how people would go, play that because it's a pure experience. It knows what it wants to do, and it is a thing.
We've tucked the proper game behind a menu.
Yeah, and it is not Far Cry. Which is really weird.
Yeah, it almost sounds more like I would prefer to pick it up, play it in survival mode, but like not actually do any of the story stuff. Like just get by.
Yeah,
and just muck about.
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't know. From all intents and purposes, I've understood you can play all the way through the story with that, which would make sense. But I think that it would be quite difficult to do so. Almost like you'd probably have to give it like 10 goes because you probably die that many times. So I think that there are a couple of loops that it sort of still says, you can do some quick travel if you get to certain checkpoints in the game and things. So it gives you some creature comforts to that, and probably enough for you to be able to get through the game, I think. But yeah, I think it'd be difficult to do so, which is nice to have that challenge anyway. But yeah, I think that in terms of Far Cry games, I don't really know, because I mean, obviously with Ubisoft in such turmoil anyway, and they've gone to the nth degree now where they've released so many of them. I don't know if there's another one slated or not, and
I don't know. I mean, I can imagine that nowadays, if you do like another numbered mainline entry, they've got to the stage that they're so big and so like they're wanting, big actors for key parts and all this kind of stuff. I imagine the budget is ridiculous for some of them. I have no idea off the top of my head how much Far Cry 6 would have cost to make, but I imagine that it dwarfs most of the other early ones. But if we're remaking Black Flag, perhaps we're into remake territory, and I know a certain little 80s inspired, happy-go-lucky little number that is probably ripe for a bit of a bit of a polish.
I mean, they tried to go back to smaller with Mirage, didn't they, for Assassin's Creed?
True.
It could be something they give an attempt to.
Mm.
Black Flag's performing.
I don't know.
I've seen a lot of people picking it up, but hopefully they're not putting all their eggs in that one pirate ship to sort of save that business. But I mean, it's such a good game though. Right, cool. Sorry, we drifted off a little bit at the end there. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and we'll speak to you again real soon.
Cheers.